Welcome back to the library studio here as part of the Yawa blog. After some consideration and recognizing where we're going on this adventure, which is back into the garden, we've decided to rename this series Returning to the Garden. And this will be episode 2, with the previous recap presentation as episode 1 of our Return to the Garden. There are very few things that I could share with you that are as vital to knowing this, that God's plan, as it's portrayed in the Torah, plays out over 7,000 years, with the 8,000-year period representing infinity. It was just 8 years shy of 6,000 years ago that Adam and Chava were escorted out of the garden. 2,000 years, which is 40 Yobel after that time, Abraham and Yishak climbed Mount Moriah, to perform a dress rehearsal for what would be Pesach, with the very Son of God serving as the Passover lamb. And so 40 Yobel, which is 2,000 years from 1968 BCE, when the narrative of the covenant was established on that mountain, is when Dod, the very Son of God and our Messiah and King, fulfilled Passover on that very mountain, on Moriah. And that was 33 CE. And so 40 Yobel, or 2,000 years from that point, will be 2033. And we will experience the fulfillment of the fall Mikra, Chag, Sukkah, Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. And it is on Sukkah that we return to Gan Eden. Yahweh is very clear in his prophecy. So it's a wonder that I'm the only person sharing this with you. But that is the purpose of Sukkah. It is a celebration of our return to Gan Eden, and it occurs in year 6,000 Yah, which is 2033. Our entrance back into the garden after the fulfillment of Teruah, which is the 23rd and 24th of September of 2033, which will be the greatest show on earth. That's a day we could talk about for 5 hours and not run out of material. We will experience the return of Dod and Yahweh on Kippurim, which is the 2nd of October, 6:22 p.m. in Jerusalem as the sun sets, of 2033. And then just 5 days thereafter, we return to the garden on Sukkah, which is from the verbal root, sakak, which is identical to the verbal root of gan, which is gana, all conveying the same meaning: an enclosed, protected, covered, and sheltered garden. So that is where we're headed back. The prophets have proclaimed it. The earth is transformed back into the Garden of Eden conditions as the earth is purged of all traces of religion and politics, militancy and conspiracy during Teruah. And this is the beginning of that celebration of the fall, Moed Mikra. So that's what we're celebrating. It's our return to the garden, and I thought we should designate the series appropriately. And we've already done a number of shows on the garden, and it's amazing that the more we study the material, the more we learn. You know, for example, in the previous episode, I shared with you that the Shamak of Yahweh is Dod. He is the branch that enables our lives to be renewed and grow. And the Adamah is Yada. He is the very bloody red man of the earth who will emerge from the soil and nurture that tree such that you can find your way back to it. And that these two individuals are the same individuals that were spoken of in Genesis 1 and Bereshith in the opening chapter, where God went on 4 long statements proclaiming the purpose of the greater and lesser luminaries, one reflecting the other's light as signs for the Moedim, these restoring witnesses to God's eternal testimony that are fulfilled as Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, which is what Dod fulfilled in 33 CE. He is not given credit for it by the religious because they have stolen his accomplishments to create Christianity and Judaism, even indirectly Islam. And then we are about to celebrate Shabuah. It will be celebrated in two phases, with the time of Israel's troubles beginning on May 22nd of this coming year, just 7 months from now. And then the following year, the 11th of June, 2027, is when we anticipate the Shabuah ingathering. And then following that, 7 years thereafter, and 2033, the great show begins on Teruah, as I have shared, and then Yom Kippurim with the return of father and son, the great family reunion and homecoming, followed by our return to the garden, which is why this series is named as such. This next sentence is interesting to diagnose. We spent a lot of time on it in a prior show. It is because while it is preference with kol, which means every aspect of the entire or all of something, and in this case, tree, which is etz, is singular. So God is speaking of the entire tree, and of one particular tree. Tree is masculine singular in the text. And tree is a productive, upright life with firmly embedded roots and branches which reach up to absorb the light of the sun. It is from atza, its verbal root, and it is distinguished by etza, which means to provide counsel and advice through diligence and effort on the entirety of the plan for the purpose of, developing a backbone. So we have some character and overcoming challenges. I told you that I'm trying to deal with a cranky back here these last 3 or 4 days. I've even got a ice pad behind me now, out of camera sight. And doing so to advocate for the proper response, even if painful, while also risking being shut out because it is an open defiance of the schemes of others. It's a challenging to be the tree of knowledge in a world that celebrates lies. And it says of this tree, and this tree is not literally a tree. The greater and lesser luminaries are not literally the sun and the moon. God uses symbols and metaphors to tell his story. He's really good at painting pictures with words and using symbols and metaphors. So the tree of knowledge is this series of books. It's Yada Yahweh. If you wanted to make name a person that is responsible for it, it would be Yada. Just as Dode, he is the tree of lives. His story is told in the 3 soon-to-be 4 volumes of Coming Home. He fulfilled Pesach, opening the doorway to life, which is why he became the tree of lives. And it is the purpose of the tree of knowledge to reintroduce all that Dode has achieved to the world, so that the people of this world are finally in a position to capitalize on Dode's fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bokotim. So you know what he did, when he did it, why he did it, how you can benefit from it, how you capitalize upon it. All of these things are essential if you're going to survive to the end of this time of trouble, which, as I say, commences shortly and concludes less than 8 years from now. So it says of this individual, this man, it's masculine singular, that is being represented by the tree, that is providing counsel on the entire picture that God has painted. From God's point of view, and he's the one that is speaking, he's delightful, he's desirable, he's pleasing, he's even fruitful in delivering a productive and treasured harvest. That is his purpose. The tree of knowledge bears fruit, and the fruit is the knowledge of God, an understanding of God. This is from the Hebrew chamad. It says that he is an attractive and valuable resource to whom to look forward to an anticipation of his demonstrable fruitfulness. We have shared many times that the role of this same individual, Yada, it happens to be myself, that's why these books are all designated as Yada, Yahweh, under the symbol of the menorah, that it is Yada's responsibility to serve as the Adamah Parah. And as I shared in this last program, Parah simply expands what we know about the concept of this bull being productive and fruitful. And he is the one who is cultivating this final harvest of Shabuah and then Teruah. And so from God's point of view, he's going to deliver the goods. He's productive. He is offering what is a delightful, desirable, and treasured harvest. He is Chamad. And so this is God's view of Yada. And he would go on to say of this individual that he will be visually portraying that which is clear and comprehensible, conveying a supernatural revelation. Marah is the Hebrew term here, and it speaks of a phenomenal, even supernatural vision, such that we can ponder the implications of something. It is from Ma and Ra'ah. Ma means to question, to think about, to investigate what pertains to. Ra'ah, what can be seen, perceived, and considered. The fact that he is his witness of this tree, because he's still talking about this man represented by the tree, and this one who is producing a highly treasured and desirable harvest, who is considered entirely comprehensive in his testimony regarding the fullness of Yah's plan as this Etzah, that he is offering what would normally be considered a supernatural understanding of God's revelation. This is a Marah. It's used to speak of the revelation of God. And now he's doing it by studying Yahweh's prophets and conveying their message. But it's so much more than that, because he is specifically gifted by the seven spirits of Yahweh to be able to analyze the testimony of the prophets and provide amplified translations that reveal insights that have never been seen before, that have never been shared before, that were specifically written into the text to present at this time in this way as part of this program for you. That is what a La Marah is conveying. And God is saying, it's Tova, baby. It's beneficial, it's good, it's productive, it's pleasing. What you're listening to and what you would read in these books. In fact, this one is so interesting because it is the presentation of what's going to occur in the last 8 years. This is future history. It's 825 pages of amplified translations and of commentary and of insights, so that you might know what is going to happen, when, where, and why, and how you can benefit and protect yourself as well from all of it over the next 8 years. That's why it's called Et Sarah, the time of trouble. So here we are. We know that the Etz is a man symbolized by a tree, and that from God's point of view, he's providing a supernatural, inspired revelation that is exceedingly productive and beneficial. And it visually portrays a clear and comprehensible message from God that Yahweh says is delightful, desirable, pleasing, and fruitful, and that it ultimately is going to deliver a marvelous treasure for everyone who is part of the covenant, including this beautiful flower from my flower, Miss Leah. For those who haven't, I would encourage you to consider the Runaway Woman, which is the featured post on the Facebook page. If you go to yadayah.com and you look down and you click on the Facebook link, it'll take you directly to it. It's a song that she wrote about how her life models that of Israel, and it's a lovely story, and I hope you enjoy it. I've certainly listened to it 3 or 4 times already today, and have written about it and pinned it to the Facebook page. So consider it. It's absolutely worth the listen. So
We're gonna hear it on Friday.
Now continues by introducing us to what I view as the stars of this particular show of the garden. But it's interesting to note that Yahweh is going to list the tree of lives first, but he's not going to say anything about it for a very, very long time. He will eventually in the prophets talk about having your name written in the book of life and its lives. But that's thousands of years from the time that he did, as he's describing here, presenting these 2 trees. And the trees, from God's point of view, were not created at this time. They were existing. And I want to remind you that the trees are symbolic of 2 men. These 2 trees, the tree of lives and the tree of knowledge, are the greater and lesser luminaries, the Gadol and Katan Ma'or, in the previous chapter, the opening chapter of the Torah and Bereshith. It is fascinating to recognize that they're presented here, but they're not created here. And that strongly implies, since these are the 2 most important men in God's story, the 2 that he said to serve as signs because they fulfill the Moed, restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony of Yahweh, the 7 annual feasts that I've already shared with you, that they were 6,000 years ago, right there. So it's becoming ever more evident that these 2 individuals, Dod and Yada, the king and his herald, the greater and lesser luminaries, lives and knowledge, have been intertwined and have been part of the fabric of Yahweh's plan, well, from the beginning. Where we have just covered the 1st and 2nd chapters of the Torah of Bereshith. That's as much in the beginning as you can possibly be. So it says here, Ha'etz, the tree, the productive, upright life, firmly embedded with roots and branches, of Chayam, of the lives, plural, renewals and restorations, revivals which lead to prosperity, was in the center of Hagan, this sheltered and enclosed garden, this protected garden, along with, in addition to, Ha'etz, the tree, another productive, upright life with firmly embedded roots and branches which reach up to absorb the light from Etzah, providing counsel and advice through diligence and effort on the entirety of the plan for the purpose of overcoming challenges while advocating for people to make the proper response. Also, masculine singular, of Hadayath, of the knowledge, of the acquisition of information with the focus on the application of discernment and judgment for the purpose of perceiving and comprehending. It is from the verbal root yada, which means to know, to be familiar with, to understand, and to develop comprehension of Tob, of that which is good and productive, of that which is beneficial and proper, favorable and desirable, agreeable and pleasing, moral and appropriate, useful and valuable, as well as bad, raw, evil, harmful, wrong, erroneous, from corrupt compatriots, morally inappropriate, malignant, and disagreeable rhetoric from loudmouthed associates, words and actions which are of no value, morally depraved, displeasing, and troublesome. That is Barishith. Barishith means in the beginning. Genesis 2:9. So consistent with Yahweh's presentation of the greater and lesser luminaries, and in conjunction with the Shemach and Ha-Adamah, we found that the Etz Shayam and the Etz Dayath and the Gan Eden represent our King and Savior, as well as his herald and voice. It's a most amazing drama that is going to play out before our eyes as two individuals are tossed into the mix. They are Adam and Chava. So these are magnificent developments that have been laid out before us, and we ought to be celebrating them, because the more we glean from the conditions that existed in the garden, the better we are prepared for it. And in this regard, one of the things that I think it's important for you to know is that, Etz, when scribed as Etzah, is given added dimension. It means that we start with Etz, and we see a productive, upright life form that is firmly embedded, its roots reaching down into the soil, the Adamah, its branches which reach up to absorb the light of the sun. And this would be its Shemach. And in its simplest form, Etz is symbolic of the Choter stem, who is presented as a Natsar observant branch in Isaiah 11. And it's there that we are told that his Sheresh roots keep Hu, which is him, this is a man now, steadfast, so that he can be, as Yahweh describes him, Parah, productive and fruitful. With all of this confirmed in Yahweh's voice through Yashayah and preserved in the great Isaiah scroll, it is patently obvious that the Choter is not a messianic figure. The Choter is the tree of lives. The tree of knowledge, pointing to the tree of lives. I have tree of lives always on the brain. It's going to be my go-to, because my role is to help you get to Dode as the tree of lives. So I'm going to make that slip many, many times because while God has described the Choter absolutely irrefutably as the tree of knowledge, his entire purpose, his modus operandi, the moment that he wakes up every morning to the moment he goes to sleep at night, he's focused on a single thing, a single person. That's the very Son of God, our Messiah and King, our Savior, Dode, the chosen one. He is our former and returning King, and it is the purpose of the tree of knowledge to bring you back to the tree of lives. And so he is, according to Yahweh, Parah. He is productive and fruitful. So the Choter is being described using every metaphor for tree. As I've shared previously, you think that's just a string of coincidences? Well, I don't think so. Further tying these stories together, when addressing the allocation of his Ruach spirit, God selected the verbal phrase Nuach al-Hu to say that his Spirit, the Spirit of Yahweh, will settle and remain on him. And this just so happens to be the same verb Yahweh will apply to positioning Adam in the garden in Bereshith 2:15. And ultimately, God would bestow an additional spiritual characteristic that is delivered by his Ruach to the Choder stem. And interestingly, they're all presented as feminine attributes consistent with Ruach, and giving this lone man, the Choder is masculine singular too, and all the pronouns are masculine singular in this discussion. But it gives this man the Spirit of Yahweh. That's the first spirit being allocated to the Choder. In the very presence, the power, the influence, the capability of Yahweh is upon him. He has the Ruach of Chokmah, which is intelligence, the Ruach of Binah, which is understanding, and of course, fourth, of the enablements that is afforded to this man, the Choder, representing the tree of knowledge, is Etzah. Etzah, tree. And as we just heard, when tree, Etzah, is prescribed the he ending, it is a tree providing counsel and advice on the entirety of the plan. So yes, the fourth Ruach spirit applicable to the Choder designates him as a very special Etz, one with spiritual qualities, in God's voice presented in Yashayah, Isaiah 11:2. If you want to claim that's a coincidence, then you aren't smart enough to be listening to this program. I would encourage you to go away so you don't hurt yourself or anybody else in the process. A little bit of knowledge in a little mind can be a very dangerous thing. God is about to remove all doubt regarding this Etzah, this tree providing the entirety of the picture through his advice and counsel. You see, following the Ruach of Gabora, which is the fifth of the seven, which means courage, conviction, confidence, which I hope you're witnessing as you listen to this program. The Choder, according to Yahweh, this stem, is given the Ruach of Dayath, of knowledge. And that should end the debate for anyone who is thoughtful. But why is it 2,700 years after Yahweh spoke these words to Yashayah and he wrote them down for our benefit, is the one who was symbolized by the tree, the one who is the Choder, the one who is the lesser luminary, the one who is the Adamah Parah? Why is he the first to figure it out and to tell you that the Choder is in fact the tree of knowledge? Yeah, it's irrefutable. I guess some might still be hesitant. I don't know how. But these are facts that are indisputable. So the Choder has been thought by many to be a messianic figure. It's claimed as such, and I've always viewed that as utter nonsense. The presentation is clear that he is a stem. Dode, who is the messianic figure, is the Shemach, as we talked in the last program. That's the main branch that grows from the tree of lives. He's not going to be represented by a Choder stem. I mean, he can be introduced and heralded by a Chodar stem, but he is not going to be reduced to a stem. You don't take the Shamak and reduce him to a stem, just like the greater luminary is not the lesser luminary, just as the king is not the herald. So the fact of the matter is, it is the Etz Dayath and not a messianic figure. The tree of knowledge, the messianic figure, is the tree of lives. Should have been obvious. What was Dowd when he fulfilled Pesach by being crucified by the Romans? What was he hung on? A tree. That wood post and that crossbeam. It's a tree that formed the doorway to life. It was Passover. The symbols are all there. The understanding is there for the taking, for the benefiting. This debate over the nature of the Chodar should have been resolved long ago. And it is in the top 2 or 3 most important prophecies in terms of the arrival of individuals during the last days that's ever uttered. You know, there's 2 or 3 references to Dowd returning as king, and yet no one gives him credit as being the one that God said that my son Dowd is returning with me as king. There is not a single prophecy that tells us that there's going to be a returning Messiah whose mission is going to be to save the world, and yet 2 religions are based almost entirely on it. And yet there's an entire chapter of Yeshaya and an entire mashal word picture scribed by Dowd himself, devoted to this Chodar, who uniquely has the 7 spirits of Yahweh. And he writes a Nesh, from which I am sharing. It's the very sign that Yahweh spoke of that was going to be scribed by the greater and lesser luminaries who served as banners for the Moedim. It is a very clear, direct, consistent story from beginning to end. Few things are really as important as knowing this. And oh, by the way, that fruit of the Dayath of knowledge, the 7th spiritual gift, is the Yirah, respect for Yahweh. That's what it is ultimately delivering. And as is often the case, the prophets contribute to our understanding of the Torah with Yeshaya, Isaiah 11:1 and 2, explaining what we are now witnessing here in Bereshith, Genesis 1 and 2. You need to make the connections to pull these things together. But there is more. Not only would Yada be the first to make this connection between the Chodar and the tree of knowledge, he is also the first to recognize Dowd as the Etz Chaim, the tree of lives. And this is because the Gadol Meor, the greater luminary, fulfilled Pesach, Passover, in year 4000 Yah, consistent with the narrative on the 4th day in Bereshith, Genesis 1. Collectively, these are among the greatest discoveries ever made pursuant to Yahweh. And they were all delivered and derived by Yada as the Chodar, representing the tree of knowledge, regarding Dowd as our Savior, the greater luminary and the tree of lives. No, should you not care about God's symbols? You just want to cut to the chase. I don't know what chase you want to cut to. Should you not think it's important to know Yahweh's name, that Dowd is actually the Son of God and the Messiah who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, Bekodim, and therefore is our Savior, and that it is Dowd who is the King, who is returning with Yahweh, and the date is certain, on October 2nd, 2033. Should these things not resonate with you? Should you not really care about how God's story is being fulfilled, then I can tell you you're going to be viewed as God viewed Adam, as dull, uninteresting, boring, as someone who didn't listen, was unwilling to engage in a constructive way, and most certainly was not reliable or interesting. The fact is, as I have shared previously, without Yada, the fact is that no one knows that the Dode fulfilled Pesach Matzah B'Kodim, that he is the tree of lives. And if you don't know that, you can't consume its fruit, and you will not survive past 8 years from now. You will not be among the entrants back into Eden. You have to know this, to engage in a relationship with God, to be part of his covenant family. It is an essential aspect of knowledge. It is the primary theme of the Mizmor all the way through of Dode, that he volunteered to fulfill Pesach as the Passover lamb, that his Nefesh soul carried our guilt into Sheol to deposit it there to perfect us so that we could be enriched and empowered by God and be adopted into his family on Bikurim by the Bakor, firstborn of Yah. This is an essential understanding. It was the discovery that is part of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. It was not discerned anywhere else or stated as emphatically by anyone over the last 2,500 years. And so now you know. This is the who, the what, the where, the why, the when, and the how of the greatest story ever told. And you are among the privileged few who are hearing it and can capitalize upon it, learn from it, and grow. Then understand and make a contribution such that you too are valued by Yah. Well, I thank you for listening and look forward to sharing with you again tomorrow. I know this was a shorter program than normal, only about 37 minutes in length, and we normally go just past an hour. But under the circumstances, I think this is a good place for us to stop. We'll pick up our analysis tomorrow with this series on our return to the garden. Good night.